Near the end of the year 9 AD, or perhaps the beginning of 10 AD, the city of Rome was alive with celebration. The Roman people rejoiced in the triumph over the Bellum Battonianum, a hard-fought war against the rebelling Illyrian tribes that had made heroes of Tiberius and Germanicus. Amidst the revelry and pride of Rome's citizens, a sombre messenger arrived in the heart of the empire, carrying with him a grim token that would cast a shadow over the festivities. The messenger bore a leather satchel, worn from a long and arduous journey from the distant lands of Germania. His destination was the domus of Caesar Augustus, the revered father of Rome. Within the satchel lay a macabre gift from King Maroboduus of the Marcomanni tribe. It was the severed head of Publius Quinctilius Varus. Varus, a trusted Roman commander placed in charge of Germania by Augustus himself, met a tragic end in Germania's Teutoburg forest. Manipulated and betrayed by Arminius, his chief advisor and commander of his auxiliary forces, Varus had needlessly led 3 legions, the 17th, 18th and 19th, into a deadly ambush. King Maroboduus had received Varus's head from Arminius, who, by displaying the ultimate symbol of his victory over Rome, sought to solidify an alliance between his coalition of Germanic tribes and those under the reign of Maroboduus. However, Maroboduus chose not to use the head as a threat or as a symbol of dominance. Instead, the Marcomanni king sent Varus's head to Caesar Augustus as a gesture of respect, ensuring that Varus's family could give him a proper burial with the honours befitting his rank. Although he had been hastily recognized as king of the Marcomanni by Tiberius, who could not afford to wage simultaneous wars in Germania and Pannonia, Maroboduus nonetheless honored his frail alliance with Rome. He did not join Arminius, but neither would Maroboduus take up arms against his countrymen, choosing instead to maintain a position of neutrality in the war that Rome would certainly now bring to Arminius. Reports had previously reached Augustus that Varus's legions had been ambushed by Cherusci guerrilla fighters on September the 9th. Though he had experienced some losses and a portion of his baggage train, Varus had successfully extracted his legions from the ambush and built a fortified camp. While awaiting further attack, Varus had sent out riders in the night with instructions to make for the Rhine and notify reinforcement legions of his situation. That had been the last report Caesar Augustus heard. Now, as he opened the leather satchel, the sight of Varus's severed head confirmed for Augustus his worst fears. Rome no longer had a military presence across the Rhine in Germania. Nothing stood between Arminius's coalition of Germanic tribes and Rome's provinces in Gaul. Normally calm, composed and displaying the stoic behaviour reminiscent of the old Republic, the news of the tragic loss in Germania shook Augustus to the core. He rent his garments and cried out, "Quinctili vare, legiones rede," or "Quinctilius Varus, give me back my legions." As the weeks passed, Augustus, who in his mourning for Rome's lost legions had stopped cutting his hair and beard, continued to receive fragmented reports. Groups of survivors from the Bellum Varianum, those who had hidden themselves in the dense foliage until such time as they could flee into the dark forest, began turning up at various military encampments along the Lippe River, adding further details to the ever-broadening horrors of Arminius's betrayal. Following the annihilation of the 17th, 18th and 19th legions, the Germanic victors captured those who had surrendered under a prefect named Seonius. While many of the captured were led off into slavery, others suffered far more brutal fates. The Germanic tribesmen put some survivors in wicker cages and hung them above roaring fires, allowing them to slowly roast. They sewed the mouths closed of some Roman soldiers, but only after first removing their tongues. Others were sacrificed to the Germanic deities in large cooking pots, their bones afterwards used in various religious rituals. When Prefect Saonius saw the horror to which he had surrendered, he took his own life. As soon as word of the Clades Variana reached Lucius Nonius Asprenus, nephew of the late Varus and commander of Rome's legions stationed in Mainz, the Roman general acted with all haste. He immediately sent 2 legions north to help secure the area around the Lippe River. The Legio I Germanica went to Ubiorum, and the Legio V Aludae marched for Xanten. After the brutal massacre of Varus's 3 legions, Arminius then performed a clean sweep of the area east of the Rhine. Leading his bloodthirsty guerrilla forces, Roman garrisons and towns alike fell to Arminius and his coalition of Germanic warriors. Roman citizens were slaughtered en masse. To ensure that Arminius's forces did not cross the Rhine River and invade Rome's Gallic provinces, Augustus and Tiberius ordered the deployment of several legions. From Hispania, the Legio II Augusta marched to Mogontiacum. Acum. The Legio XX Valeria Victrix, Legio XXI Rapax and Legio XXIII Gemina, having concluded their services in Pannonia's revolt, began the long trek to the Rhineland by way of the Danuvius River. Under the supreme command of Tiberius, Marcus Valerius Messala Messallinus took the Valeria Victrix and joined the Germanica at Ubiorum, while the Gemina made its way to the town of Augusta Vindelicorum, commanded by Aulus Caecina Severus. To prevent panic from spreading throughout the city of Rome once word of the disaster reached the ears of the populace, Caesar Augustus ordered the Praetorian Guard to maintain a vigilant watch at night. Not only did this ensure the people that Rome would not be invaded by surprise, the extra Praetorians in the city conveniently fortified the security of Caesar Augustus himself, who now had to make some unpopular decisions. As a result of the great loss, not just of life, but the economical loss of stolen weapons, livestock, and plundered armor, grains and other food supplies, which followed closely on the heels of the Bellum Battonianum, Augustus was forced to raise taxes. A 1% tax increase was placed on the sale of all goods, and an increase of 5% was levied on all inheritance benefits. Then, in his role as Rome's Pontifex Maximus, Caesar Augustus ordered an examination of any and all portents and auspices surrounding Varus's defeat. As pontiffs and augurs alike combed through reports, no less than 9 omens and harbingers were recorded, allowing Augustus to attribute Varus's defeat and the loss of 3 legions to divine wrath. Donning his priestly robes, Caesar Augustus entered into Jupiter's temple on Capitoline Hill. There, Augustus made a vow of Ludi Magni, a promise to hold a public festival and magnificent games in his honor, should Jupiter Optimus Maximus decide to bless Rome again with his favor. Next, every mistake Varus had made was publicized and promptly criticized. Publius Quinctilius Varus was accused of excessive taxation and unrelenting cruelty in Germania, and of breaking oaths the loyal Germanic tribes had made with Rome. His time as governor of Syria and his crucifixion of 2,000 Judean rebels was trotted out and examined as further proof of Varus's brutality. And Varus, who had fought at the front lines alongside his men and in keeping with old republican traditions, ultimately fell on his sword, was presented as having committed suicide, not out of honor, but out of fear. His intelligence was also publicly questioned. Not only had Publius Quinctilius Varus failed to protect his vanguard and baggage trains while on this wholly manufactured and unnecessary march through the Teutoburg forest, but in his blind trust of Arminius and his Germanic allies, Varus had displayed high levels of arrogance and hubris, especially given he was warned of the attack by Segestes, the father-in-law of Arminius. But Varus had ignored the warning. Was it any wonder the gods had punished Rome? By the time Augustus, who had personally appointed Varus governor of Germania, had successfully deflected any blame for Rome's devastating defeat in the Teutoburg forest, the Roman people were permanently offended, brought to immediate rage by the name of Publius Quinctilius Varus. As the government's official scapegoat for the loss of between 15 and 20,000 Roman souls, the absolute ruin of Varus's name simultaneously destroyed any possible political future for his young son by Claudia Pulchra, who was unfortunate enough to share his father's now reviled name. Enraged over the deaths of their loved ones, the common citizens of Rome took out their personal vengeance against Varus on the Ara Pacis, or Altar of Peace, a public monument which Caesar Augustus had dedicated in 9 BC on the Campus Martius. The image of Varus, who appeared on the Ara Pacis, was desecrated and vandalized beyond recognition. Seeing an opportunity to cement official blame, Augustus was in no hurry to repair the defaced image. Its destruction served as a constant visual reminder of just who was responsible for Rome's tragic defeat and the tremendous loss of life. But, lest they forget, and the population's anger begin to wane, Caesar Augustus needed merely to stand solemnly, dash his head against a wall, and cry out, "Quinctilius Varus, give me back my legions."